Hello everyone and welcome to the Hockey Hub. So today we're doing another team preview and we're looking at the San Jose Sharks. Now the San Jose Sharks have been a contender for a very long time in the NHL, but this past season they took a serious step backwards and missed the playoffs and finished as one of the worst teams in the NHL. Is it time for the San Jose Sharks to rebuild? Well, we're going to look at that right now, but we're going to start with the additions they made. The San Jose Sharks made a couple additions from the Minnesota Wild. They got goaltender Devan Dubnyk and forward Ryan Donato. I think Donato is a good fit for the San Jose Sharks. He wasn't exactly fitting in super well with Minnesota. In his first season he was okay, but this season it kind of fell apart for him. But getting Devan Dubnyk, I'm not a big fan of that move. I think Devan Dubnyk's best years are easily behind him. He was pretty brutal last year, and I don't think that he's going to make San Jose's goaltending any better. It's not like San Jose had to give up a lot to get him, and plus Minnesota retained half of his salary, but it doesn't change the fact that I don't think Dubnyk is an NHL caliber starter at this point, probably best suited as a backup, so San Jose really doesn't have a starter. I do like getting Ryan Donato. He is a good young centerman, and maybe he can play a second or third line role for them this upcoming season, sorry. They also re-signed Matt Nieto. They had him a couple years ago, but he was in Colorado for a while. Nieto is a solid bottom six forward, fourth liner and whatnot. Not exactly a star, healthy scratch sometimes, but it adds to that forward depth in San Jose, which they really need right now. They also signed Patrick Marleau for his third stint with San Jose. I imagine that this is probably Marleau's last season. He's going to try and break the points record, or the games played record, sorry. And I'm kind of hoping he does it. I mean, it would be cool to see. That was a record that a lot of people thought was kind of untouchable for a while by Gordie Howe, but Marleau could definitely do it, and it would be fitting if he did it in a San Jose uniform. Now, despite the fact that San Jose did get some forward depth back with guys like Donato and Nieto and Marleau, they did lose some forward depth. Now, they did lose Joe Thornton to free agency. I think they should have traded Thornton at the deadline. I'm sure there was a team that would have taken him on. Even if they got a late round draft pick, it would have been better than losing him for nothing to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They also lost Melker Karlsson. They chose not to qualify him. Tim Heed, Jeremy Waugh as well. Tim Heed and Waugh are just, a couple depth defensemen. Bottom pairing guys, not big losses. Melker Karlsson really isn't a big loss either, but a solid, fourth liner. They lost Aaron Dell, who was actually kind of solid for them this year. I'm surprised that Dell ended up signing with Toronto, where he's likely going to be the third string goaltender, because I still think Aaron Dell is a quality NHL backup. Not a prolific backup like Jake Allen or Anton Khudobin, but I think he's a solid enough backup that a team like Edmonton, I think, could have given him a shot. And I don't know if getting Devan Dubnyk is going to be a massive upgrade over Aaron Dell. It is an upgrade, but I still think Aaron Dell was solid enough in San Jose, and going with a tandem of Dubnyk and Jones, I don't think that's going to work out very well. San Jose is a really interesting top six. It's led by their captain Logan Couture, and I do think Logan Couture is a really good centerman. I don't know if he's a true star number one centerman. I think he's definitely a great number two, and on a team like San Jose, definitely has to play that number one role. He's very clutch in the playoffs, and everybody knows that. But I don't think San Jose is going to be a big playoff contender for a few years. So Logan Couture is going to have to put up some better numbers in the regular season, and he does. He is a consistent 60-70 point centerman. In this past season, he lost a lot of games due to injury, and that really did affect San Jose. There's also Evander Kane, and Evander Kane is one of the more controversial players in the NHL. Right now, he's beefing with the Paul brothers over boxing matches, and I think that's pretty funny, but doesn't exactly matter when it comes to the on-ice stuff. There's also Thomas Hertl and Timo Meier, two really good young forwards. Hertl is obviously a bit older, but I really like Timo Meier's game. I think he's an all-around solid forward with some serious scoring upside, maybe 60-70 points. And same kind of goes for Hertl. So those two guys are, I think, the guys that San Jose should try and kind of build around for the future. I don't know if they're necessarily franchise faces, though. More like some really good complementary pieces. There's also Kevin Labanc, which Labanc took that one-year deal this past season and was really kind of banking on himself, and it didn't exactly pay out. He didn't have a good season. He did end up signing a 4-year contract, but Labanc, he's a solid second-line forward in my opinion. Maybe he could be a first-line forward, but ideally he's probably best suited in that second-line spot as more of a complementary piece. And I think Ryan Donato is probably the sixth man in there, is maybe that second-line center. Donato, once again, a good young forward. I don't think he has a lot of high-end upside. I don't think he's ever going to be a first-line center. Ideally, maybe a really good third line center or a decent second line center, and I think that's kind of the ceiling for Donato. San Jose's top four is really interesting to me. They've got Erik Karlsson, Brent Burns, Marc-Edouard Vlasic, and Mario Ferraro. Ferraro is the youngest one there, and he does have some serious potential as a solid top four defender. But the rest of those guys, I think, are on serious declines. Vlasic has been on a decline for the past couple of years now, and his contract looks like one of the worst in the NHL. He's still a good defensive defenseman, but there's almost no offense left in his game, and he's really starting to lose a step in his skating. Brent Burns has been one of the more overrated defensemen the past couple of years, and I think people are finally starting to realize that is the case. He was a prolific offensive defenseman in his prime. He did win a Norris Trophy due to that, and I think it was mostly deserved. I think Karlsson should have won it that year, but he was definitely a force in the offensive zone, but Brent Burns defensively is kind of an adventure. He's really not a good defensive defenseman, and for the minutes that he plays in San Jose, he ends up costing them a lot of goals. And since considering last year's offensive numbers were down, if Burns isn't producing as much offense as you would like, then he becomes a liability out there. Erik Karlsson is kind of in the same boat there, whereas his offensive numbers are still quite good for a defenseman. I still think he's one of the more prolific offensive defensemen in the NHL, but his defensive game has really taken a hit. There was a time where Erik Karlsson was far and away the best defenseman in the NHL, and that time, sadly, is no longer here. But for the San Jose Sharks, he's still getting paid like it. His $11.5 million contract is not looking good right now. Between Karlsson's injury history and the fact that his game has taken a step back, that contract's going to be an anchor for them for a long time. Karlsson, he still puts up good offense, but his skating and his footwork isn't where it once was, and that's due to the injuries he's had and the surgeries and everything. And maybe since San Jose's had such an extended layoff due to COVID and not being part of the return to play, that maybe this could actually be of great benefit to Karlsson, and he can return to his Norris Trophy winning form, but I'm not sure if I see it. Those injuries really did a number on him in his career, and it's unfortunate, because I am a big Erik Karlsson fan. I would like to see him bounce back, but I honestly can't see it happening. San Jose's goaltending duo is not one of the best in the league, to say the least. In fact, I would say it's probably a bottom five tandem. Devan Dubnyk and Martin Jones are probably going to let in a lot of goals this upcoming year. Martin Jones has been one of the worst goalies in the NHL the last couple of years, and only sprinkled in with some good playoff appearances. But Jones simply isn't a starter at this point. He was good for a little while in San Jose there, but he's out of his prime, and I think a lot of it with Jones is mental. I think he's got a very fragile ego, I guess, or sense of confidence. And I think if he was more engaged and more confident, maybe he could be a much better goaltender. Jones still has potential, like to bounce back and to be a semi-decent goaltender, but right now he consistently puts up poor numbers. He doesn't give his team a chance to win. And it's probably a good thing that he isn't going to have to be the starter for San Jose at this point, but I don't think their starter in Devan Dubnyk is that much better. Even if you have these guys splitting starts, I don't think it's going to make for a very good tandem. San Jose still does have some real good offensive power when it comes to their best players, though, with Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns still serving as two really good offensive defensemen. Burns, I think we are seeing a bit of a decline, like I previously mentioned, but Karlsson could still put up a lot of points for a defenseman. And then Logan Couture, Timo Meier, and Thomas Hertl is a solid trio of forwards. I think those guys are all really good, especially Logan Couture. And I don't think that this is a great core by no means. I don't know if it's a contending core, but there is some good pieces here and some valuable players. And it would probably greatly benefit by having some younger players in that core, with Burns and Karlsson and Couture all being on the wrong side of 30. But thankfully for San Jose fans, Meier and Hertl should be good players for many years to come. Now, a player I want to talk about for San Jose is Mario Ferraro. Now, Ferraro really came into his own this past year and is looking like one of the better young defenders in the NHL. Not necessarily a lot of offensive upside, but solid in his own zone, and thankfully injected some youth into that San Jose lineup. I think Ferraro is a piece that San Jose can rely on for a little bit, and hopefully can become a good part of their future whenever they get around to adding more prospects and younger players. But another player I want to get into is Patrick Marleau. Now, Patrick Marleau, this is probably his last season, and he has put together one hell of a career. He's probably a Hall of Famer due to how high he is on the games played list. I don't know if he was ever a dominant enough player to be considered a Hall of Famer, if not for that stat, but considering he's kind of likely to finish top of the all-time games played list, I'd say that's enough to make him a Hall of Famer. He's one of the San Jose Sharks' all-time best players, up there with Joe Thornton. And if this is Marleau's last season, it's been a great career, and San Jose Sharks fans should appreciate everything he's done for the team. Then I want to talk about Brent Burns as well. Now, Brent Burns really, like I said earlier, is on a decline, and I'm starting to wonder if maybe he's a guy they could look at trading. I don't know if there's a lot of teams that would want to take him on, though, considering that decline is there, and with that massive contract. If they do end up trading Brent Burns, they're probably going to have to retain a lot of his salary, which isn't, I don't think that's something San Jose wants to do, since they still have the mindset of wanting to be a contender, so I guess they're not looking into trading Burns. But I think if there's a trade out there, they should seriously consider it. Burns isn't getting any younger, he's only getting older, and his game is taking a really hit, and for how much they're paying him, they simply can't afford to have another aging, declining defender on such a big contract. They've got so many of those in San Jose, and it's part of the reason that, they're starting to really struggle, and their overall organization isn't looking the greatest right now. I would have the San Jose Sharks as a rebuilder. To me, their roster just screams a team trying to hold on to, their past glories of going all the way to the Stanley Cup final, but they need to realize when it's time to tear it down. They had some really good runs, and it was a fun team, and I did wish that San Jose would have at least won a Stanley Cup with Thornton and Marleau and Burns and all of them, but it didn't happen, and I don't think it's going to happen with this core. I think guys like Karlsson and Burns are probably there long-term due to their contracts, so I don't really know how you start a rebuild with San Jose. They need to maybe sell off players like Evander Kane, like Logan Couture, that actually have value, so that way they can stockpile draft picks and prospects, because I seriously think, San Jose is one of the oldest teams in the league, and they definitely need to tear it down and start again, and start building a new core to be a Stanley Cup contender, maybe 5 or so years from now. But for right now, I firmly have them as a rebuilder. But that does it for today's video. I appreciate you guys watching till the end. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys later. Bye for now.